I'd like to introduce the three panelists who've been very closely involved with this project. It really is a unique collaboration of big companies with startups. I think it's really going to set the stage for the future of these kind of collaborations. So with that, I'd like to introduce Elias Drakopoulos, who is Senior Vice President responsible for Europe B2B for Deutsche Telekom. Christian Morales, Corporate Vice President and General Manager for EMEA at Intel. And Mike Flanagan, Vice President and General Manager at Cisco Data Analytics, who this morning, when we were having a briefing session ahead of this, was actually interrupted by the Internet of Things because he had a phone call from his home, and the home alarm was set off by his housekeeper. So I think that was a kind of timely intervention. So I think we're just going to start with Elias. And for people in the room who don't know what this program is about, can you just sort of talk through the basics and the highlights of the program?
So the program that we call Challenge Up started with the basic idea of creating an environment that can foster and accelerate and incubate the startups in the area of IoT in Europe. That was exactly what we intended to do. We worked together to see how we can use the knowledge that we have within our companies in terms of mentoring and networking, but then bring the innovation that comes with the startups in the form of the program. So that was the idea.
So why did you decide to focus on IoT?
Why do we decide to focus on IoT? If you look around the industry, we are in the middle of a major transformation, a digital transformation. And that has a drastic impact on traditional business models and the way that business is conducted. Internet of Things is at the center of that transformation. And it has severe implications on, as I already mentioned, how business is conducted. It creates opportunities, it creates challenges. As a result, IoT is at the center of our strategies, and therefore this was the natural topic to focus on.
And what does IoT mean for you? What are the sort of some of the focuses you are seeing in this program?
IoT for us means, actually not for us, we start with our customers. It means a different way of our customers conducting business. It changes not just the way that business is conducted, it changes the whole market environment. It changes your customers, it changes your competition. And if it changes these things for our customers, it has the same effect for us. So from that point of view, we look into, for example, we have a program right now that we're running in Europe, which happens also to work with Cisco on smart cities. There is that in its own right changes the way that the city interacts with the citizens. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of value that can be created.
So Christian, what's pretty impressive about this, there was 12 startups, I think, picked out of something like 400 submissions, 3 big corporates, and this all happened over 6 months. I wonder if you can just talk through your experience of this program and why you got involved.
Well, what has been absolutely exciting is the variety of projects, ideas, innovative approaches to transform the economy and the way things are done today. Use the analytics, use big data, just to keep on accelerating the innovation and changing the way things are done. And we worked very closely. This was the first time because we were working on this for 10 years or so as a company, and then we teamed up with Deutsche Telekom and with Cisco. And it was great to have 3 companies with a worldwide footprint to work on this, and we benefited from each other's experience, which was absolutely great. And we started with about 1,500 companies in total, so this was a very large number of companies. And I want to say there is thousands and thousands of companies in Europe, Middle East, and Africa working on this, which is very exciting. And it's not only Europe, it's all the countries up to the African countries or Middle East or Russia, CIS, and so on and so forth. So everywhere you see companies working on how to do things differently, how to use the technology, how to transform not only the applications, but also the way business is conducted and the way sustainable projects are developed. And this was really the exciting part. And what the key part of the project was to listen to them first, try to do a selection, because you need to do a selection, and then come up with ones that have technologies, have projects, have applications, and a business model that is going to be the most sustainable so that it can survive and it can keep on developing.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you pick the startup? So there might be some startups in the room who are thinking about doing this, next year. So what were you particularly looking for?
So they had to come. We really looked at what were the projects that were the most disruptive, most innovative, and the ones that will bring a new approach on anything that is being done today.
Were you looking at the ones which scared you most?
And then scale too, right? Because it's got to scale. A great idea, great innovation is great by itself. But then what makes the difference is the capability to scale worldwide.
One of the things you were saying ahead of our discussion was that Europe is a fantastic place for the Internet of Things. And it was actually one of the best regions in the world for the Internet of Things. And I'd love you to just talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, about 37% of the Internet of Things usage of applications and technologies is here in this region. And I like to remind that the most competitive and most innovative country in the world is here in Europe. And if you look at Europe, Middle East, and Africa, you look at the 30 most innovative and competitive countries, 23 are based here. So this is a ground for engineering, for expertise, for designers, for business innovation that is absolutely unmatched anywhere else in the world.
Mike, I'd like to bring you in a bit about, it is a pretty unusual joint venture between three big companies. Perhaps you can sort of talk about how much resistance there was at the company. How did you resolve any doubts about going forward with this?
Well, I think Christian started off by mentioning that it really starts with our customers. And while it may be convenient occasionally to say, well, we're big companies, we can't move that quickly, or use that as an excuse not to be able to innovate as quickly as we need to, our customers won't tolerate that. They expect us to move quickly. They expect us to innovate quickly. Change is impacting our customers faster than it ever has before. Everything is being disrupted in their world, and that means that we have to move faster. And I've been very impressed by how quickly our three companies have been able to move together, and it really started from a shared focus on solving customer problems.
So how did you decide which companies you wanted to work with?
For us at Cisco...
And actually just a bit of detail about how you picked, right at the beginning, how you picked mentors, how you decided to work with the companies would be great to get some real information.
Sure. I mean, for us at Cisco, when we work in various innovation programs with startups, we're looking for three things, really. Obviously, the technology and the ability to disrupt, as was mentioned. The talent that's involved in the company. There are some incredibly talented people that were selected to work in this program, not just the technology that they're working with. And the last thing is timing. I think we talked about the fact that IoT is disrupting our companies and the pace of change is accelerating that disruption. And so it really is a combination of those three things: the technology and the ability to disrupt, the talent that they bring, and the timing of their idea in respect to what we're seeing in our customers.
And what did you learn? Obviously, you all have big innovation projects and you'll work with startups in different ways. I wonder if I can just go through each of you on the panel, looking at how differently this made you think about working with startups. Because obviously, it's a unique collaboration to have three companies involved. It's a bit like having three parents. I mean, at what point is it a lot of, too many parents in the room?
Well, if I may start, we will certainly have an important role in terms of technology coaching, in looking at the technology and solutions part of it, then at the connection with and interaction with the ecosystems, which is very important, because no matter how good your idea or your project or your application is, you've got to make it happen. To make it happen, there is not one company that can make one thing happen. It's got to be a collaboration between several companies. And getting those connections with people who can do the hardware part, the solution part, the applications part, the connectivity part, and so on and so forth is very important. And that's why having complementary mentorship is so important in this aspect.
Mike, I wonder if you can answer the same question.
Well, I would certainly agree with the complementary mentorship. I mean, the complementary nature of what our three companies bring when it comes to IoT gives us the ability to work together very well, but also to provide very different points of view in the way that we mentor and work with these startups.
Can you perhaps give me an example of how you all three work together? Because some of the programs, some of the startups, you all three work together on, and some just a few of you work together on. So can you perhaps give me an example of one when you worked on all three and how that worked together?
One of you want to take that, or?
I mean, we jointly approach the mentoring and the networking issue. So once we identify a startup, first of all, we check whether there is any particular interest in terms of the offer and the service that that startup is proposing related to our business. So that's something that may trigger more interest within the mentor community. Other than that, the whole approach was to open it up because we want new ideas to come in. So the mentors came into, volunteered into participating into the program, came from every aspect of our business. In our case, they came from our technology units, they came from our research units, they came from the commercial units, whether sales or marketing. And the whole idea there was basically, let's see what is being proposed by the startups, and let's see whether this can somehow be combined also with the ideas that we have in our strategies, and how we can potentially enhance also the ideas that we have in going to market. That's, if you like, was the start of how we would structure the program with the mentors, and then this was followed with the networking and everything that came.
So I'd be interested, as a big company, I work for a big company, and we're always having a big tension about how do you innovate, how do you deal with startups. Sometimes they're completely impatient, have different sales cycles, don't know how to talk to people, or they can learn a lot from us. But how did you experience some of the learnings you got from the startups?
Well, if you look at the evolution of research and development, because this is where the core of innovation was in the past. Most of the large companies will have a very large research and development center somewhere in the world. They will bring expertise, they will bring engineers to that place. Then it went to a system which was a distributed system around the world. So the research centers will go where the talent was, where the expertise was. And now it's gone beyond. It's beyond one single company. It's about an ecosystem. And it's even going further beyond, which is about connecting to people in the world who have something to innovate about on any given topic. And you might have a handful of people in one country, one person in another one, 100 in another one, and then you need to get this cooperation and collaboration going so that you can bring the innovation you want on a given topic. And this is what has fundamentally changed from 20, 30, 40 years ago.
And what did a lot of your mentors you'll work with, perhaps you can just talk a bit about how they experienced the program and what they got out of it?
Well, obviously what is interesting in those startups is that there is usually a team with a leader who has a great idea, be it on technology, be it on a solution, be it on a business model, how to do something differently. And some of the very disruptive business models we have seen, or startups that have now become large companies in the world, they didn't come up with a new technology, they came with a new business idea. And this business idea just brought an incredible impact on the way things are done on a worldwide basis. So you work with that team, and we all have questions. For example, they will ask, well, this is a great solution. Who will be the best people to try it with? Is there a customer somewhere in the world that has this kind of need? How do we connect with them? Then how do we engage? How do we do a proof of concept? And so on and so forth.
So again, Elias, the same question for you. What kind of feedback have you had so far from the mentors, and how many mentors were involved with this scheme and talking to the startups?
In the program itself, we had at the end, more than 60 mentors that were assigned to the program. The feedback that we got was extremely positive. I think the interaction with the startups, with the great ideas they have, the energy, the passion on what they do and how they believe in that was very much reflected into all the comments that we got back from the mentors. Building to the point that I made earlier, I believe that in all 12 startups that participated in the program, we felt that what they offer adds a lot of value also to our offerings, and therefore that created a linkage into the stuff that the mentors are doing into their everyday business. So overall, a very, very positive approach, very positive messages, and that's also a very important point, because in the beginning when we started the program, even though we believed that this is one of the key areas that we will bring value to this program, we weren't exactly sure how it's going to materialize, but at the end we saw significant excitement and support within the companies.
So how did it change? If you had to give an example of what some of your mentors got out of the program in reverse, rather than just access to the ideas of the startups, how would you describe it? Again, if a company here is thinking about doing this in a similar way.
Every time we are basically, as large corporations, any large corporation has a lot of pluses, a lot of strength and power, has a lot of minuses as well, especially when you operate within the corporation. So the ability to bring people from the corporation close to innovation as it comes from the startups is always generate a lot of value and passion in that person. So therefore, it's something that we want to do because that person goes to the other person in the company and talks about the interesting experience and the ideas that he or she had, and that basically stimulates more interest. So I think in addition to everything else that we got from the program, the value that we had for the startups, which is the discussions with the mentors, the networking, the fast proof of concept, the go-to-market partnerships that we agreed. When we look inside our own companies, in addition to the go-to-market strategies, we also stimulate this new approach, this mentality that comes from the startups in our organizations. And that's something we really love, we want to continue.
And have any of your mentors jumped ship or decided they've seen the light and they want to join a startup instead?
We haven't had anyone that I know yet, but we want them to stay now and transform our own company, to tell you the truth.
I can tell you more than 75% of my team has joined Cisco in the last 5 years through an acquisition. And one of the things that they bring to the mentorship is the ability to talk about their success when they were a startup, the things that they had done, as well as how they've made the transition into being part of a large corporation or partnering with other large organizations. But you asked about the benefits that the mentors get, and certainly for those in my team who came from startups, being able to help contribute to the startup community, help be part of another startup success is very meaningful for them. Beyond just what they're doing as part of Cisco, it's an opportunity for them to give something back to the startup community, and they get a lot of energy from the passion that comes with that.
Did they start dressing differently after hanging out with the startups?
Well, I was talked into wearing jeans on stage today, so apparently it's contagious.
You've obviously worked closely with some of these startups, so can you just give a flavor on each of you of one of the startups you've worked with and that you found really interesting problems and you obviously want to carry on potentially working with as well? Perhaps you can just each give me an example, because some of them may be in the room as well.
I could start with one, for example. If you look at what's going on in the consumer environment today or in a retail environment, people want to understand what customers like most, how they behave, how to use the new technologies, the different audiences, how do you address those audiences, knowing that they are different in the morning, mid-morning, noontime, evenings, and so on and so forth. The level of reception those audiences can have varies through the day. So you need to understand how this works and how you learn about it and what you can change when you are a retailer, for example. And there is a company called Sensei, for example, who analyzes very well how people behave in retail store, what they like, they don't like, and how this evolves also depending on the time of the day they are doing this. So it's just a lot of analysis on how you can improve the experience of the consumers, but also be more efficient in the way you communicate with them and you bring them the value propositions they are expecting.
And did you work personally closely with some of the startups?
Well, I've worked with several of them. And what is absolutely amazing is that they come with ideas you might not think of. Also, because in a lot of cases you have millennials, or you have what we call the Y generation people, and even if we argue we are Y generation experienced people, we are maybe too experienced as Y generation people. So having the ideas from those millennials is really, I would say, is very disruptive, because they come with ideas and a resilience in those projects that is different from what we have been used to do in our business, in the environment we have been working in.
So what's an example of something you learned from a millennial?
Well, just in the work environment, how do we transform the work environment so that it's much more collaborative, much more cooperative, and I would say more efficient. And if you look at the way startups work, the environment to start with is very different. And the technologies, some of them are starting to use now, in the way they collaborate and communicate with each other is very different and from what we are used to work with.
Yeah. Elias, wonder if you can talk through one of your programs you work with, one of the startups.
Yeah, I think when you look into the all 12 startups in the program, they all have very, very interesting solutions. If you're asking me to select one, I would name Scenic. Also being responsible for the B2B business in Europe, one of the areas that we are really trying to develop is the smart office concept. So Scenic has developed an intelligent controller, a very neat device using natural user interface, a very easy way to interface that can help you control the smart connected devices you have in the office. And it really fits extremely well in a business opportunity that we also had identified, and therefore, in fact, we, all three companies, recognize that this is a solution that we would like to support. And in the use case that is presented here on the smart office, we have both Intel-based computers going to support it. We have from Cisco the collaboration system, the telepresence will be controlled through a device, and our KiwiCon platform for smart lighting and smart power will also be controlled for that. So we feel that that's an extremely innovative approach addressing a particular need that exists today, and it fits extremely well with our go-to-market and our strategy. Yeah.
And do those partnerships exist with the startup prior to this program, or have they been able to draw on your technologies because of this program?
There were some startups that potentially we could have some relation before, but I would imagine for the majority, no.
And Mike, your favorite?
Well, I'm not sure favorite is the right answer, but
okay, I won't get you to pick your favorite child.
As Elias mentioned, there are unique aspects to all the startups who are part of the program, and all doing very exciting things that we've been energized by. If I was to pick one to talk about today, it would be enJoin. Industry 4.0, of course, is a huge initiative in Germany, and I think it's a great example of the power of IoT in manufacturing. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier was it's timing, technology, and talent. The timing for using IoT in manufacturing is great because of initiatives like Industry 4.0. The talent of enJoin is really very strong and impressive. I also think that technology is particularly worth mentioning here because it's very extensible, regardless of whether you're manufacturing food or beverage or anything else. And so in that way, there's a lot of upside potential in their business, and so very interesting.
So why should startups get involved in this? If you had to sort of look ahead to next year, what would you say is your best sort of sales pitch to a startup in this room about what they can get from you guys?
Well, certainly we have been startups ourselves. We were startups in an environment where the big businesses were pretty established, and we were able to innovate to disrupt through it and grow. So we certainly learned not only how to innovate, but how to scale it, and how to compete. Like in sports, you compete every year in a championship, and it's not because you have won this year's championship that you start as number one next year. Next year you have to play it again, and so on and so forth every year. So we have certainly, as large companies, been good at playing those championships and winning them. We certainly have a lot of technology. We have a lot of worldwide scale, because it's important to have a worldwide presence when you are a company. And I think those are, to start with, some important reasons why cooperation would be beneficial for startups. as we will gain from them, they will gain from us from this aspect.
And Elias?
I think if you look into our strategy, one of the main pillars of our strategy is win with partners. And that reflects our core belief that when we move into this digital business, this new digital environment, the IoT being a major part of it, the way that you will create value is through partnerships. Now, if you look into a company like Telecom, there is a lot of knowledge and there's a lot of strong positioning in this market. So that creates a lot of value, potential value for the startup if we can figure out a way to cooperate. And exactly that is what we figured out with this particular program, how we can basically carry value from the startups to our corporations and from our corporations to the startups. And we believe that from what we saw, I already mentioned we consider it a big success. We intend to continue this program, and we believe that it creates a win-win for both.
And Mike?
I think I'd just add that we talked earlier about the power of the mentorship from the three companies. Very diverse backgrounds in each of our teams, and a lot of different perspectives to bring. We have a build, partner, and buy strategy when it comes to how we innovate. And so I think whether you're a startup looking for ultimately an exit of an acquisition, between our three companies, we've done quite a few of them, and we can tell you what kinds of things make the company attractive for Intel or Telecom or Cisco for an acquisition. We certainly, between us, have thousands or tens of thousands of partnerships, and so as Elias mentioned, those partnerships are where value is going to be created, and thinking about all those partnerships that we've had success in and the ones where we've had failures, that's another aspect of mentorship that we can provide to startups. And of course, in building, we didn't talk much about that today, but across our three companies, there's an incredible amount of internal innovation, and we can talk quite a lot about how we innovate internally as well.
If you had a sort of some advice to startups about what not to do in talking to big companies, do you have any advice? Any of you on the panel?
What not to do? Well, I think we can actually focus on what to do. Just continue, be disruptive, just continue challenging everything that is already a status quo. And we will be there to basically help. That's the motto of this particular program. And if there is an idea that really carries value and has potential, to work with you on that.
And I want to end about the idea of the Internet of Things and looking forward to the future. What are each of you actually looking forward to existing that you can't do now, like talking to your fridge or whatever, having your Coke can kind of tell you to stop drinking or whatever it is? What is it you actually would love to see happen in the future?
I'd like to have a robot at home that tells me that when we are not there, things are in good shape, and we are optimizing the usage of energy, and the security is fine. And this evolves for, by the time some tens of years from now, when we are more mature and we can get some more help, so we can stay home. I'd like to have this.
So you can stay home?
Yes.
All right, okay. And Elias or Mike?
I will take a little bit different approach to this. I think when we look into all these technologies, the intent is to make our life easier. So all the concepts around smart home is exactly that, or actually make our working environment easier. So I would look as us making a reality all the concepts that we have right now on the table. The smart office, the smart home, the connected car. There's so many things that are basically being discussed right now which may become reality or fail. If we happen to make 50% of those work, I think we will be much, much better. So I will focus on that.
All right, and finally, Mike.
This may be a little bit of a boring answer, but I'm looking forward to things maturing a bit. I love IoT. I'm a bit of a geek. I have connected lights at my house that I can control with an app, and an alarm system that I can control with an app. The problem is I have 25 apps on my phone for controlling all the smart things that exist in my life now, and I'm looking forward to the day that there's maybe one app that can control those things. So a little bit of convergence in IoT, a little bit of standardization, I think as things mature, is something that we can all be excited about.
So if a startup walked in saying that they could do that, that's what you'd like to invest in next year?
I'd be excited about that.
Okay, finally, are you going to stay involved, and you're staying involved in the program next year? Perhaps you can just talk through your own perspectives from each company.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Committed to continue.
Okay. There is going to be a session later for some of the startups if you want to learn about them. That's going to happen at 4 o'clock. And afterwards, if any members of the media or people have questions, everyone's going to be around afterwards. So with that, I'd like to thank all the panelists and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.